Good morning, students. Today, the topic which we are going to discuss is classification of assessment on the subject assessment of learning. These are the learning objectives of today's topic. Know the oral test means you will be able to understand the concept of oral test, understand the written test, you will be able to understand the meaning of the written test, to be familiar with performance test, you will be able to give the definition or define that this is called the performance test, objective test. You will able to define that this can be the objective test, subjective test. These are the subjective tests. Difference between individual test and group test. That this is the particular difference between the individual test and the group test. Difference between standardized and unstandardized test. What is the concept of standardized test? What is the concept of unstandardized test? And how the standardized test is different from unstandardized test. Numerous types of tests are used in schools. Means various types of tests are used by the schools for evaluating, for assessing the learning or the skills that has been learned by the learner. There are different ways of categorizing tests mainly. Now they are saying that various types of tests are used by the teacher to test to learn how much the learner has learned, and there are different ways of categorizing tests. Means the categorization of tests can be done in a number of ways. Ease of quantification in responses means the first categorization is ease of quantification, mode of preparation, how they are be preparing, mode of administration, how we are administrating that particular test, test constructor, how the test constructor has created that test, mode of interpreting results, what is the process or the mode method way has been used for interpreting the results that we got and nature of response and what type of responses that we are getting. As to mode of response, tests can either be oral, written, or performance. Now, what they are saying on the basis of responses, the type of responses which we are getting for a particular test, the test can be divided or classified either as an oral test, written test, or a performance test. Now, what do you mean by oral test? It is a test wherein the test taker gives his answer orally. Means the teacher will ask the students some questions and the student has to give the answers of those particular questions in the oral form. Written test. It is a test where answers to questions are written by the test taker. Means the students are instructed here that they have to respond in the written form to those particular questions. Now the third one is performance test. It is one which the test take creates an answer or a product that demonstrates his knowledge or skill. Now, what is that? In that test, the test taker means the person who is going to test the learner or the students create an answer or a product. Now, for giving the answer to that particular question, he has to create an answer or a product, and that product will demonstrate his knowledge or skill towards that particular question, as in cooking and baking. Now, this is an example of a performance test where a learner is cooking something, and on the basis of the cooked material, he will be judged, his performance will be judged. As to ease of quantification of responses, tests can either be objective or subjective. Means ease of quantification, the method of quantification of responses divides the test into two categories. The first one is objective and the second one is subjective. Now, what is an objective test? It is a test paper and pencil test where students' answer can be compared and quantified to yield a numerical score. Now, the first thing is that the teacher is creating an objective test, the objective tests are free from biasness or the subjectivity. Second thing is that it's a test paper and a pencil test where there will be some questions and you have to give the answer. And the responses which were given by the learner or the students can be compared and quantified to yield a numerical score. This is because it requires convergent and specific responses. Means the responses are fixed. That these are the specific responses which should be given by the learner if he or she is giving the correct responses. Now subjective tests. Now these are those tests which are subjective in nature. Means when the examiner is judging, assessing those test paper, they are biased and they are not objective. It is a paper and pencil test, means here also a examiner asks some questions and the student has to give the answer, which is not easily quantified because there is a lacking of a numerical score. As students are given the freedom to write their answers to a question. Now, in a subjective test, a question will be there, and the student has the right to write their answers in their own way. They can express their own feelings in that particular question, such as an essay test. Now, example of a subjective test can be a essay type where a student has to write an answer to a particular question in 4 to 500 words, and in that the student will express their views, their ideas. The, thus, the answer to this type of test is divergent. Now, why it's divergent? Because every individual will think in its own way. Every individual will produce his own ideas in his own way, express his thoughts in a different manner. That's why we are saying that the subjective tests are divergent in their process. Now, as a mode of administration, means when we are administrating a test can either be individual or group. Means the administration of the test can be classified into categories. It can be either an individual test or in a group test. Now, first we will define what are individual tests. Now, individual test, it is a test administered to one student at a time. Now, what is that? An individual test. One student will be administered a particular test at a particular time. Now, what are the group tests? It is one administrator to a group of students. Means at a particular time, at a specific time, that particular test will be administered to a group of students. Means at a particular time, several students will be giving that particular test. Now, as to test constructor, tests can be classified into standardized and unstandardized. Now, we are saying that a test creator, constructor means those who are constructing the test. They can construct a test basis on the whether it can be a standardized test or it can be a unstandardized test. To measure the achievement levels of student means to measure what student has achieved, to measure how much they have learned, what are the outcomes of that particular student. Tests are constructed. Means the tests are constructed by the teacher to measure to evaluate, to assess how much they have learned. Tests are constructed by teachers who are constructing the test. The tests are constructed by the teacher for the students for their classroom consumption. Also, there are tests which are standardized for wide use, and means they are saying that there are so many tests that has been called as an standardized test for its wide use. Means the use of these tests are not narrow, and the uses of these tests are very broad. Now, what do you mean by standardized test? So we will discuss what is a standardized test actually is. A standardized test is an instrument of measurement. What they are saying that it is again an instrument, a tool of measurement means we are assessing, we are measuring, we are evaluating something with the help of a standardized test. Now, a standardized test is an instrument that means it can be a tool of measurement which is related to measurement, it can be related to assessment, which measure what it's aimed to measure. Now, what is that? Which measure what it's aimed to measure that that particular test will be created for measuring that particular thing only. For example, as a test creator, I have create a test and that is to measure the intelligence of the learner. So, which measures means it will measure the intelligence of the learner, what it's aimed to measure, and what it's aimed to measure, it's aimed to measure the intelligence of the learner. Quite correctly with constant results. Quite correctly means the results which we are getting with the standardized test are reliable. We can rely on those tests with constant results. Constant in a continuous basis. The results are in the constant basis. The process of standardization demands a more critical analysis of the means when a test creator is preparing a standardized test means a test creator is developing a standardized test. That standardization demands a more critical analysis. Now, the critical analysis from the side of those who are creating that standardized test. Subject matter. What should be the subject matter for which the standardized test has to be prepared? The subject matter, the content, the topic on which you want to create, on which you want to develop a standardized test. Rigorous planning of the test. Now, when we are talking about the standardized test, it cannot be prepared easily. It required a lot of planning. Means a planning is the basis on which a standardized test can be prepared. So what they are saying that when we are preparing, when we are constructing a standardized test, it required lot of hard work from the side of test creator. More accurate construction of test items. Now, what will be the test item? The questions or the statements which are in there in that particular test. More accurate construction means when you are constructing the test item, it should be more accurate. Means it should be according to the topic. It should be according to the content. More accurate construction. Construction, how we are constructing that test items. Analysis means you have to analyze whether the content, whether the test has been according to the subject matter, whether it's giving the same results or not, and refinement conditions for administration and scoring. And you have to analyze whether that test is going to measure what it's aimed to measure, that and refinement condition for administration. That what are the conditions necessary for administrating that particular test. Now you can say that the condition will be that it should be a room where there should be a proper arrangement of sitting, there should be a proper light. Means these are the reinforcement conditions for the administration of a particular test. Scoring. Scoring procedure is fixed, means when you are using a standardized test or when you are constructing a standardized test, you have to be sure that this will be the scoring procedure. If you are prepared a question in a standardized test, if that question is correct, then the scoring procedure is already been decided that you have to give 2 marks or 3 marks for that particular question. Now, the next one is preparing standardized tests. How you can prepare, what should be the planning of standardized test. It is highly sophisticated process requiring technical competencies of high quality. Means when you are going to prepare a standardized test, it's require technical competency, means abilities of high quality from the test creator. Deep understanding of subject matter means that individual should have a deep understanding of the subject matter on which he or she is creating a standardized test and an actual experience of teaching. And that test creator should have an actual experiences of teaching. A single person cannot possess all the things, means a single person cannot have the technical competency, cannot have the understanding of the subject matter in detail or in depth, and it might be that he do not have the actual experiences of teaching. A single person cannot possess all the things. So we need a cooperative effort of a panel comprising competent content specialists. Now, when we are preparing a standardized test, it's required so many things. So we are saying when we are preparing a standardized test, we need the cooperation of various persons who are specialized or experts in the content for which we are preparing the standardized test. Test designers and practicing teachers. So we require content specialists, means the experts of that particular area, test designers who have the knowledge, how technical knowledge of how to prepare a test, and practicing teachers means those who are involved in the teaching learning process. Now, steps in preparing a standardized test. What steps has to be there while you are going to prepare a standardized test? Now, the first one is planning the test that you are going to construct a test. Writing the test items. Now, you will write the each and every test item that you want to ask in the standardized test. Testing the items for estimating the reliability and the validity, preparing the final form, and you will prepare the final form that these are the test items that will be included in the test. Driving norms, that these are the fixed norms that will be there for the for that administrating for scoring procedure of the particular test. Establishing final validity and reliability. You have to establish the validity and reliability of a particular test scoring, that this will be the procedure of scoring procedure of that particular test. Interpreting and using results. Now, interpreting that if a person fall in this category, what will be his intelligence if we have prepared a standardized test for intelligence, and using results and how you will use these particular results. Now, planning the standardized test. The best part of standardized test is more weightage is given to objective type test. Means when we are preparing a standardized test, we are going to prepare objective type questions, not the subjective part. As they are more convenient to analyze, it is easy to analyze those questions statistically and refine them. More so, they ensure 100% objectivity means there will not be biasness when we are evaluating or analyzing the objective test. Writing test item. The panel should prepare the test items. The panel of experts, the people who have the technical knowledge of designing the curriculum. The panel should prepare the test items and it should be through review and scrutiny. You will review that these questions should be there in the test or not. Then they should be tried out to overcome the errors. And if there are some errors, they should be tried out to overcome those errors. Testing the items. After the careful construction of the test means now you have constructed the test. It should be administered on a sample of population. Means you have to administer that particular test on a sample of population for which you are constructing that particular test in order to avoid some of the drawbacks. Now, administrating the test on the sample help you to avoid from some of the drawbacks that are in the test. Preparing the final forms, items are selected from the refined ones which are pre-tested or field-tried out. Now, might be that some items you think that these are not properly designed, framed, that these items can be removed after administrating the pre-test or the final tried out. Driving norms. The very important feature of any standardized test is reflected in its norm. That these are the norms, these are the rules and regulations for administrating, scoring that particular test. Norms are the tables of information necessary for the interpretation of the test scores. Now, that norms help us to identify, help us to interpret or analyze the results, the test scores that we have gathered after administrating and are obtained by giving the particular test to a large and representative sample. And how the norms will be formed. And these norms are formed when we are administrating the particular test to a large and representative sample of people in the same grades and of a type similar to the group and per type similar to the group on which we have administered the test with which the teacher will use the test. Establishing final validity and reliability. When all the care is taken to plan the test that you have planned the test accordingly, and when all items have been refined and all items that has been in the final test has been refined on the basis of the pre-test, on the basis of the pre-test that you have considered, then it is known that that test is valid and reliable. Then only we will say that that test is a reliable and a valid test. Now, scoring. These tests should be manually scored or machine scored. The scoring procedure can be done by manually or the machine score can be used. Machine scoring is more accurate but at time expensive. Means machine scoring is more accurate but it's times expensive. Sometimes it's need a lot of money to get the results from this machine scoring. Interpreting and using results. According to rules of the manual means everything should be according to the manuals. The scores are interpreted and converted into norms. It is difficult to interpret these tests. Sometimes it is very difficult to interpret the these tests, it has a variety of purposes. As it has a variety of purposes, after the interpretation, the results are used for mean you have administered the test. Now you have, after the administration you have got some scores, and after this getting the scores you have to interpret the results. Placement and grouping students. Now where the students can be placed. Diagnosis of learners. What are the difficulties areas where the learners are getting? Evaluation of instructional material and method. Now we are evaluating that these instructional material will be appropriate for the learners or not, and which teaching method should be used. Appraisal for achievement in curriculum research and planning, uh, in the area of the uh, curriculum where we can encourage the research and planning and for the motivation. Now the next is unstandardized test or the teacher made test. It is one prepared by teachers, means these tests are prepared by the teacher for use in the classroom, and where they can use in their particular classroom with no established norm for scoring and interpretation of result. No established norms means there are no guidelines given by the teacher that this is the scoring procedure, and how the test paper should be interpreted in this way. It is constructed by a classroom teacher to meet a particular need, and these are constructed by the class teacher himself to meet a particular needs of their particular class. Teacher made tests. Basically, teacher made tests are used to evaluate the progress of the students in a school. Means these tests are used by the teacher to evaluate, to assess how much they have learned. However, the specific use of tests may vary from school to school and teacher or teacher. Means the specific use of tests, as the test will be made according to the needs of that particular class. So, the specific use of test may vary from school to school and from teacher to teacher. The test results can be used for bias for students, means the test results that being used or we will get can be used by the student. It can be used by the teacher and for other administrative purposes also. These tests are very simple to use, as these are made by the teachers himself, easy for the student as they are according to the needs of the students. Teacher can assess the strength and weakness of the student. With the help of the teacher made test, the teacher can assess the strength and weaknesses of their students. Teacher tests are conducted continuously on the continuous basis, and children get immediate feedback. Now, on the basis of the scores that what the students get, the teacher can give the immediate feedback to the learners, or the learners immediately gets the feedback that these are the strong areas and these are the weaknesses where I have to work. They are made by the teacher himself to measure the achievement of the pupil from time to time. Means these are made by the teacher, and the main purpose is that they want to assess the achievement of his pupil from time to time. Limited area of application, because these tests are made by the teacher for their particular class, prepared by almost all the teachers according to their requirement, and these are prepared by the teachers according to their requirements, according to the requirements of the particular or specific class. Teacher is directly involved in test construction. Means teachers are directly involved in the construction of teacher made tests, where he can measure directly classrooms and objectives and particular class situation, where they can directly measure that these are the objectives and these are the class situations of a particular thing. This is valuable to the teacher. It caters to classroom or local situations. It can be carelessly planned and executed, means less planning is needed and less execution things. Reliability is unknown as a teacher made test. There is no need to establish the reliability done by the teacher himself. The scoring procedure, the norms, or everything has been done by the teacher himself. Teacher can understand the need for reteaching concepts and can decide remedial instruction on the basis of the scores which the teacher is getting. Now, the teacher can recognize the need or understand the need that this topic has to be pre-teach to the student. Now, this unstandardized test or the teacher-made test helps the student or teachers to understand the need or the importance of reteaching a particular concept topic and can decide remedial instruction. And on the basis of those results, the teacher can also organize remedial instructions, remedial teaching for his student. Teacher missed tests devised by the teacher are to meet their various needs and directives. Now, the teacher made tests, which are developed by the teachers, are to meet the various needs of the learner. Tests are not so carefully and scientifically prepared as the norms are not established, the reliability and validity are not established. The items of teacher-made tests are seldom analyzed and edited, means seldomly, rarely these items of teacher test mates are analyzed and edited. The type of behavioral change covered are often limited in scope. Now, the type of behavioral change. What type of changes we want in our learning? The type of behavioral changes covered are often limited in scope. Now, as a mode of interpreting results. Now, the tests are classified into two categories, that is norm referred or the criterion referred. First, we will discuss about the norm referred test. It is a test that evaluates a student performance. Means norm referred tests are also used to evaluate to assess the student's performance by comparing it to a performance of a group of students on the same test. Now, that tests are used by the teacher to make a comparison between performance of a group of students on the same test, means how two individuals are performing on a same test, and on the basis of their performance they make a comparison, the teacher makes a comparison. Criterion reference test. Now, it is tests that measure a student performance. Now, the criterion reference tests are again the tests that has been used to measure a student performance, how that student has been performing. But in that, we do not compare the performance of the students with other students. It focuses on the individual development. What are the individual weaknesses? What are the individual strengths? Against and agreed upon a pre-established level of performance, means against the criteria or the standard criteria that has been pre-established, means that must be attained by the learner, and these are totally different from the criterion test, as the criterion tests are focused on making a comparison between two groups. In today's topic, we have discussed about different classification of tests on different bases. We have talked about the concept of objective tests, subjective tests, group tests, individual tests, standardized tests, unstandardized tests, or the teacher-made test, criterion test, or the non-reference test. To study on this particular topic which we have discussed today, you can refer to these references. Now let us discuss some MCQs. Now the first one is dash is test that measure a student performance against pre-established level of performance. Now, pre-established level of performance is the criterion that are fixed for assessing the performance. Now, the options are A. Criterion reference test, whether we call it's a criterion reference test. B is norm criterion test. We will if call it a norm criterion test. C, it's objective test, whether it's an objective test or the D1, it's a oral test. Now the students, you have to select the correct answer on the basis of given choices. And the correct answer is, yes, the correct answer is option A, that is criterion reference test. Means the criterion reference test is the test that measures a student's performance against pre-established level of performance. Now the second one. Dash is a test that evaluates a student performance by comparing it to a performance of a group of students on the same test. Now, what do we call a test where a student performance is being compared with a performance of other people on the same test? Now, the options are A. Criterion reference test, B. Norm criterion test, C. Objective test, or it's D. The oral test. Now, these are the choices, and you have to select the correct answer. And the correct answer is option B, that is norm criterion test is a test that used to evaluate a student's performance by comparing it to a performance of a group of students. Now the third one, dash is one prepared by teachers for use in the classroom. Now, which test is prepared by teacher and that test will be used by the teacher in the classrooms only. Now the options are A. Unstandardized test, B. Standardized test, C. Objective test, or it's D. The oral test. Now these are the options and you have to select the correct one. And the correct one is unstandardized test or the teacher made test are the tests that are prepared by the teacher for use in that particular or specific class. Dash is a test prepared by an expert or specialist. Now, what do you call a test which is being prepared by the expert of the subject area? Now, the options are A. Standardized test, B. Unstandardized test, C. Objective test, or it's D. Oral test. Now these are the options and you have to select the correct one, and the correct one is A, that is standardized test. So a standardized test is prepared by an expert or a specialist. Fifth one, dash is a test wherein the test taker gives his answers only. Now, what is that test where the test taker gives his answer only? Means the questions are put in the oral form and the students has to give the answers in a oral form. Options are A. Written test, B. Unstandardized test, C. Objective test, or it's D. Oral test. So the correct answer is option A, option D, that is oral test. That oral test is a test where the test taker gives his answers in a oral form. Now, the sixth one, dash is a test where answers to questions are written by the test taker, where the answers of the questions has to be written by the test takers. Now, the options are A, it's a written test, B, it's an unstandardized test, C, it's an objective test, or it's D, the oral test. So, the correct answer is A, that is a written test. A written test is where the students to answer the questions in the written form. The seventh one, dash, is a test paper and pencil test where students' answers can be compared and quantified to yield a numerical score. Now the options are A. Written test, B. Unstandardized test, C. Objective test, or it's D. Oral test. And the correct answer is option C, that is objective test. As in objective test, student answer can be compared and quantified to yield a numerical score. Now, the question A, dash is a paper and pencil test which is not easily quantified as students are given the freedom to write their answer to a question such as an essay test. So, where the students have given the opportunity to express their ideas or express their views in own way. Now the options are A. Subjective test, B. Unstandardized test, C. Objective test, or it's D. Oral test. So, yes, students, these are the options, and now you have to select the correct answer. And the correct answer is yes, the correct answer is option A, that is, it's a subjective test. That is a test which is not easily quantified as students are given the freedom to write their answer to a question and the type which where the students has the option of writing the question answer are the essay test. Dash is a test administered to one student at a time. Now, what do we call a test which is administered to one student at a time? Now, the options are A. Individual test, B. Unstandardized test, C. Objective test, or it's D. Oral test. So the correct answer is yes, the students. The correct answer is individualized test. Means individualized test is a test administered to one student at a time. Now the tenth one, dash is one administered to a group of students. Now what we call a test which is administered to a group of students at a particular time. Now the options are A. Group test, B. Unstandardized test, C. Objective test, or it's D. Oral test. Yes, students, these are the options. Now you have to select the correct answer. And the correct answer is group test. Means group test is a test that is administered to a group of students at a particular time. Now, thank you, students. With this particular narration, we try to understand that the concept of objective type test, subjective test, oral, written, and performance test. What is the difference between standardized test and unstandardized test? How to prepare a standardized test, and uh, non-criterion test and the criterion test. So in the next lecture, we are going to discuss about the concept of diagnostic test. Thank you, students. Thank you so much.